This is not the way we had this planned. I had hoped to be able to be here and express these thoughts in person. But to quote Robert Burns, the best laid plans of mice and men go oft astray. Thanks to Robert M. and his Soulean ingenuity, I can be with you in this way as well as in spirit. I was lucky to be there at the beginning of the Tennessee Valley Chapter NRHS as a charter member, and was a part of the subsequent organization of TVRM. That was when I met Bob Soule. Bob and I had been on parallel paths at the same time. We both served in the Japan occupation forces on separate islands, Honshu and Okinawa, graduated from the University of Georgia in 3 years, and were enthralled by the Gainesville-Midland Railroad. But we finally came together at TVRM in 1961 in a long-lasting friendship and dedication to the goals of TVRM. Even though the Lockharts moved to Pennsylvania in 1973, Bob and I stayed in touch, usually about TVRM. Our last emails just before he passed away were dealing with an administrative item of the TVRM bylaws and, of course, the Gainesville Midland. If any structure is appropriate to his memory, it is the shop buildings and equipment. It was almost an obsession to Bob to get the work under cover and have a complete shop for restoration and maintenance. I'll give you an example of just how far we've come on this subject. Bob and I some time ago were comparing the fundraising drive that was underway at that time with TVRM with our efforts in the early days to find the money to buy a small industrial sandblasting pot at the great cost of $300. This was a wrenching experience, no pun intended. And despite some obstacles, it was purchased and put to great use. Tools were brought from home or borrowed, generally, but they were not of the heavy-duty type needed for the work. Working at a TVM work session in those days was strictly an outdoor affair. Just think a group of shade tree mechanics. A mail apartment car from the L&N had been converted to a small shop and small parts storage facility, but most of the work was done in the open. The Southern allowed some work to take place at Terminal Station, but the only protection from the elements was the sheds over the passenger platforms. TVRM had more equipment on that site than the Southern usually. Work at the yards at the old Western Union plant was all open air. But the 6910 was readied for the Cleveland excursions, the 3-spot rebuilt, passenger cars painted and relettered. Work was done on the 4501, and a number of other accomplishments were done under less than satisfactory conditions in all kinds of weather. But if you look at the artist's rendition of prospective sites for TVRM, I believe that only one does not have a shop building depicted. That one was a very early representation of a proposed display facility at Warner Park. But you can just imagine there was a shop someplace because it just wouldn't fit onto the site. As more equipment came in, it became more and more obvious to everyone, almost, that things just couldn't go on the way they were going if we were to fulfill the goals of the organization. It was determined at the very beginning that TVRM would be an operating, prototypical museum, representing the golden age of railroading. To that end, there would be lively debates when equipment was available about whether we really wanted something like that and what purpose it would serve. In Robert M.'s tribute to his father, he alludes to Bob's pickiness about what would come to the museum. We were aware of other rail museums that took everything available and wound up with a rusting boneyard that was way beyond their capabilities to maintain. Needless to say, though, that there came times after certain pieces of equipment were obtained when judicious scrapping was the order of the day, even as particular as TVRM was. It was looked upon as one item of equipment sacrificing itself for the life of another. We were grateful that Siskin Steel was not too far away. TVRM workers got the feel of a real shop when restoring the 4501 at Lucy Boiler Company. Real tools that could be checked out and used. Work in the dry without regard to the weather. And you knew when you came back, everything would be just as you left it, and you could pick up where you left off. And you could clean up at the end of the session and even change out of your work clothes. This experience changed some minds about whether or not we needed a shop. It was a case of needing a shop, but first we had to have a place to put it. Wherever the work sessions took place, Bob had them organized and productive. It was his guidance that got the work done. And he had times for other things, such as working with me as co-editor of Smoke and Cinders. We tried to get out 10 issues a year, sometimes succeeding. One of his major contributions was the report in every issue of what was going on in the area of restoration and maintenance. It kept everyone informed and interested. After listing the projects that were underway or planned, he always ended the report with, "Anybody for a job?" An early project at the permanent museum site in East Chattanooga was the 2 pole sheds spanning 2 tracks. The mail apartment car shop was expanded using box cars as work areas and dry storage. After we moved away to Pennsylvania, things seemed to really start to move in the East Chattanooga terminus toward a dream shop. Every time we would visit, there was always something new. Until now, you have the magnificent world-class shop that you're naming for Bob today. Not all of us get to see our highest dreams realized and brought to fruition. I thank God that Bob did persevere and get to see that dream fulfilled. It was not an easy accomplishment. It took long hours, sessions sometimes extended past bedtime. To pay tribute to Bob and his dedicated restoration and maintenance crews is from the ladder of St. Augustine. The heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upwards in the night. And that pretty well summed up the Tuesday night work. I'm proud to be able to add this small tribute to my good friend Bob Soule. He was both inventive, something that he had fabricated for the museum as a Soulean device. There was a Soulean approach to restoration. The Soulean hand was everywhere. He was an inspiration to me in many, many ways. Especially, he was patient with my attempts to work on the 12 inches to the foot scale locomotives and equipment. He was always a true Southern gentleman, led by example, and insisted on the highest level of excellence in our endeavors. A casual look around the museum will illustrate his adherence to these principles. The shops are the crowning achievement of his dreams and doubly worthy of his name. Nancy and I send our best wishes and affection to Joyce, Robert M. and his wife Laquita, and Mary Penelope. And to TVRM, thank you for the years of memories. We wish you continued success in the years to come, and we look forward to hearing that whistle blowing 8 to the bar. Thank you very much.